Hey there, welcome back to the Oz Shift podcast. Today we have Tamar Samuels with Culina Health. Now, she is a person who's a registered dietitian. Her team and her company has 40 plus registered dietitians across the country. And what their whole focus is one, making the idea of nutrition something that's more digestible, pun intended, for you to understand and get a grasp of, but also how to make it accessible. So many people look at nutrition and getting that information as something that's a barrier. I got to have a private chef and I got to do special different things. And the truth is you do not. In fact, they found a way to be able to have your insurance be able to be utilized to, in fact, be able to do telehealth and get all your what you should do need-wise taken care of. But they also tie into the aspect of cultural needs and personal needs and goals. And so they do a great job, so much so that other companies have come in and said, we want to help fund this to take it to a whole new level and reach more people in the world. So today, the episode is not just unpacking nutrition as like this boring, cold thing, but really understanding how you can weave it into your own life to get the great benefits for yourself so that in time you can have the healthiest, longest life possible. So dial in. Let's hop into the episode now. Hello. So you are back in the show. We have somebody new who I've had a chance to talk to for a couple minutes. We actually had a little back and forth. And I always know it's a good conversation when I pop up and I go, oh man, we're 10 minutes in and we haven't hit record on the actual episode. So it's gonna be fun. She's got a good heart about her, I can tell. And what's also cool about that is that she's doing something that very few people do, which is she's chasing a dream. She's doing something cool, venturing out into something while also at the same time being a new mother. And so venturing into this whole dynamic of a whole new world, we'll call it that. She's doing, and I love that about people who go and chase dreams. So let's welcome to the show, Tamar Samuels. How are you?
Hey, Anthony, I am doing awesome today. Thank you for having me. Super excited to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to begin this conversation because we were talking a little bit in the beginning about some things. We're going to get to those things, but I always start the conversation with one question. You can honestly answer it however you choose to answer. But let's say that I'm walking around Florida and I sit down in this cool coffee shop and there's a bunch of this hot because it's Florida, and there's some cool woman sitting next to me. It's you, and you decide for some reason compelled to turn and start talking to me. In your opinion, why should I listen to you?
Well, I think we should listen to everyone, right? We should always give people the opportunity, right? If they're not scary and they seem nice and well intended, it's important for us to give people the benefit of the doubt and have open ears. I think it's interesting because as I've become busier and busier and busier as a startup founder and a mom, I tend to want to listen to people less. But actually, what I do for a living is listen to people. So
Yeah.
that's why you should listen to me.
That's a good one. That's a good answer. I get a lot of answers. And I always ask it because I'm like, where's somebody's heart at and mind at? And you never know. Some people are like, because I'm dope. Like there's how that comes out. You're like, because I used to listen to everybody. So I like that perspective. And I like the idea that you say I listen to people and what I do, and I do want to dig into what you do, but not too early because there's going to be some fun to unpack that I believe. But I just want to know, curiosity wise, as a human being in the world, what compelled you to go? You know what? I got this idea and I want to take it to the world, and I'm just gonna do this all the time. Because to be a new mom, most people go like, oh, I have a new kid, I have a kid coming, I'm a new mom, like I need stability and security. I can't start a whole new company up. Like it's not going to be how did you venture into that? And did anybody think you were crazy?
Well, of course, it was not an intentional choice. The timing was just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. I have been a registered dietitian for about 10 years, and I met my co founder early on in my career. Her name is Vanessa Rosetto. She is also a Black dietitian. We met each other at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, and we just kind of instantly connected, but we then never really followed up with each other until 2020 to grab a coffee randomly after she DM'd me on Instagram. And we both had shared passion and frustration about the same things in the nutrition space. And we decided to create a group nutrition practice that took insurance. And then a couple months later, the pandemic happened. And then a couple months later, I got pregnant. And then a couple months later, we got interest from venture cap for our company. And so It was really serendipitous in terms of how I
Is it
got to
you?
this place where I have a startup and a toddler at the same time, but
Yeah.
definitely not, it was a choice.
Yeah.
But if I could go back and change the timing, I probably
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, that's good. I always wonder that. I mean, to me, like I had a kid young too. I was in college. Not that I was you're young by any means, but it was this thing where like I was 19, 20 when I was getting so I'm like, but I go, man, would it be better without it? And I go, no, I think he made me a little better. Like it forced me to learn, to improve, to dynamically adjust. And I'm sure some part of you going through what you're going through is going to be very useful, like in 2 years, three, even maybe next month. Who knows at the pace your life goes. Uh,
Yeah.
Going back to what you said though, what were the things that frustrated you guys?
So we're actually still frustrated about these things, but
Okay,
that's why we
good.
created Culina Health so we can really start a nutrition revolution. The nutrition space is really fragmented and confusing and inaccessible to most people. Most people think that nutrition is an elitist service that is only reserved for people who can afford to pay,
Yeah.
thousands of dollars for a personal nutrition who gives them a customized meal plan and works with their private chef to execute that meal plan.
Mhm.
And nutrition is truly the foundation of health, right? And I think with the increased interest in wellness over the last couple of years, there's a lot of misinformation about nutrition.
Mhm.
A lot of people who are not clinically trained and who aren't healthcare professionals are giving nutrition advice, and that nutrition advice is not sound. And so people are really confused about nutrition advice, but even within the nutrition space with registered dietitians, there is a lot of fragmentation where, some dietitians are really prescribing to more prescriptive diets and supplements and having these very stringent routines around food, where others are like the biohacking, and then others are sort of in this space of, we need to fight diet culture, which we do. But the way that we do that is by adopting a certain style of eating that isn't necessarily taking into account personalization. And so we created Culina so we can solve for those problems: the problem of misinformation, the
Yeah.
problem of lack of access, the problem of lack of culturally competent care.
Mhm.
Um, about 90% of registered dietitians are white women. And that statistic is not true for the patients that we are treating.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there is a disconnect there too with cultural competency as it relates to nutrition. So
Yeah.
this is why we created Culina Health, so we can bridge
So
that gap.
I like that. That's good. And I do agree. There's a lot of funny, weird language. Like we're just finding out now, for the most part, which I think people have known for a while, but more to mask it like that. The food pyramid it was all a scam, like this like, how do you guys get into that? Because I mean, information. The way I look at it is like stuff that is not valid info. It almost is easier for people to consume than the stuff. It's like, no, this is legitimate. You probably shouldn't be doing this, or you should eat more of this. How do you guys enter into the conversation, knowing that sometimes people might already have like these skeptical views on things?
Yeah, and they should be skeptical because the information has changed over time. We used to vilify fat, and that then sparked the food industry to create all of these low-fat, highly
Right.
processed products that were very high in carbohydrates, which then sparked the conversation that actually, like, we need to do low carb and high fat,
Mm.
and that
Exactly.
then caused people to completely eliminate carbohydrates and vilify carbs, right?
Right.
So the information is confusing because of all of the stakeholders that are profiting from nutrition,
Yeah.
right? And ultimately, um, that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah, it is. They do say sometimes it is easier to fool someone than to convince them they've been fooled.
Yes.
That always rings in my head. So how do you get people to get back on board? Because I'm a person that like, I used to have a gym business, my degrees in kinesiology, so I spent some time learning and understanding that before I got into the world of this, which is vastly different. But there's this conversation I have with a lot of people, and I find that there's just almost like they want to stick with the old stuff, and they want to have this combative like, hey, there's nothing's going to work. When you start talking
Hmm.
to people, what do you seem like to find this kind of the breakthrough where they go, okay, I trust you. I'm gonna rock and we're like, are there some myths that you guys break, some common conversations you guys have to unpack differently? Do you use a lot of science? Is it logic? Like, where do you get in? Because that's actually something I'm curious, really curious about, because I think it can help people at a massive scale, which is obviously what you're doing.
Yeah, such a great question, Anthony. Ultimately, it's through science and through personalization. Um,
Mm,
we have research, a large body of research
yeah.
on different topics in nutrition that changes all of the time. And as registered dietitians, we are responsible for always being on top of the research and disseminating that information in a way that is, no pun intended, digestible for people. I had to drop it.
Yeah, good one. Well
I
done.
had
I'll
to
take
drop
that.
it.
Bingo.
But also, it's about personalization, right? So we have science, we have research, but we also need to work with individuals on their particular goals and their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, we know, for example, that it's important for us to modify carbohydrate intake for people who have insulin resistance, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes.
Mhm.
That said, what does modifying carbohydrate intake mean? That looks different for everyone.
Mhm.
Some people need to have less carbohydrates. Some people can have more carbohydrates. Some people need to focus on meal timing. Some people can focus on, pairing of meals. There's so many things that are um, intertwined when it comes to nutrition as it relates to stress, physical activity, mental health, our gut microbiome, lifestyle in terms of demands, with caretaking, social life. All of these components are really important when we're working with people to change their health outcomes because they're unique, right? What works for me probably isn't going to work for everyone. And so it's really important for us to take all of those factors into account. Yes, always foundationally, we're leaning on the science, always, always, always. But
Yeah.
then we go deeper and really dive into the components of an individual lifestyle to
Mhm.
support them in seeing change in their health.
I like that. That's good. And I definitely, we're all different. My wife like eats things that I don't even know how she puts in a bowl. She just puts things in a bowl. It's the weirdest thing. It's just, and then she eats it. And like, it's like, she throw the garbage in there and then it's like avocado and blueberries. And let's go ahead and throw some barbecue sauce in here. And I'm not even kidding. That wasn't me making something up now. That's genuinely happening at my dinner table. It's amazing.
That
But
sounds like a mom who has twins. Doesn't
she
care
dialed in
about,
there. She started
doesn't have the
rocking.
time to throw anything on the
Yeah,
stove.
yeah, yeah. I think it's part of it. We all, I mean, but she honestly enjoys it though. It's cool. I mean, she does
Yeah.
her thing. She's unique. But it's fun. I think that, but part of that actually leads in like how I live my lifestyle. Our kids do just different stuff. I do different stuff. Probably mine should not include as many M&Ms as it does some days. I'm not gonna lie. I got a sweet tooth sometimes, but she buys them for me. So that's my one defense.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the other part
She's
of
your
me,
enabler.
yeah, she is sometimes. It's first what she does. She like I'm not fat by any means, but she's like, hey, you know, extra pounds, huh? I'm like, yeah. So you got something like figure it out. But then at dinner time, she's like, you want to eat some more? You want to eat? You want to eat? You want some extras? I'm like, well, you just yesterday were touching my belly. And you were telling me so. It's all right. It's all love. I'm playing around. So when I look at this, I go, this is great information. It all sounds good. And you alluded to it previously of like, yeah, but most people go like, I can't get a dietitian. Like that's a lot. Like I can't afford that. There is some thought behind the aspect of all these things that people would have to do stepwise to get someone of like, here's your food and what to eat. Even for us, we found for time for our family, we've been looking into these ready-made food programs to deliver foods to your house. I've been doing something called Factor for a little bit now. And it's
Hmm.
good, but it's not always healthy. I don't know if it's something I'm supposed to be taking in.
Hmm.
Accessibility you had mentioned. How do you guys
Yeah.
address like the accessibility portion? How can someone look at what you're saying and go, no, that's actually could be for me?
Yeah, I think the most important way that, well, we address accessibility in multiple ways, but most importantly is by taking insurance. At Culina Health, our registered dietitians are credentialed with most major healthcare or most major health insurance companies, and so that allows people to access our care
Mhm.
um, as through their insurance.
Yeah.
And for some people, that means they have no copay, no out of pocket costs. For others, maybe they have a copay. It really varies
Yeah.
for registered dietitians, but ultimately they're able to meet with us as a covered benefit
Yeah.
under their insurance plan.
Mm.
We also provide access by doing telehealth. So
Smart.
working with people virtually allows us to meet them where they're at, literally and figuratively, right? We can,
Yeah.
the work that we do requires regular meetings. You don't change, a lifetime of habits in a 1 hour session with a
Yeah.
dietitian. It
Obviously.
takes, as you know, it takes consistency and support. And so insurance allows us to see our patients pretty frequently, but also telehealth allows us to see our patients frequently. Before the pandemic, there was more of a limitation on telehealth.
Yeah.
And since the pandemic, health insurance companies have expanded their coverage for telehealth, which has allowed people to meet with us on their lunch break at work.
Mm. Nice.
And just more flexibility. I
Yeah.
had a call with someone this morning and she was commuting to work because she was running late.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's actually smart. It's crazy how like everybody looks at things like the pandemic that threw things off, but it's like, but it actually opened up a whole new world. I think it actually leaned us into utilizing technology in ways that were more creative than we'd actually been forced to have to learn. And I think it's created a nuance that's somewhat smoother than it was prior to. Because now we're like you're saying, I can lean into something which is more. It's honestly for me, it's easier if I can have a meeting and like not have to be present at the meeting because I can be
Yeah.
present here with you, but I'm going to be physically sitting in the chair, right? It opens up a whole new door of accessibility, if we call it that. I always look at this though, and I go, food is always the interesting thing. I used to own a gym, so I dealt with a lot of people that, nutrition was a big piece of it, diet and exercise. I want to ask about the diet and exercise stuff in a moment, but the one thing I battled was people going, okay, this is the change I want to make. But I know sometimes they don't make the change because of the people that surround their community. Some of it's going to be, we'll call it cultural stuff they deal with. We're like, we don't need that. I never grew up eating that, right? But they need that based on their personal work. Or like their husband's like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to eat rabbit food. Like, how do you navigate those conversations? Because I think that sometimes I see to be a barrier for people going, I will take my health seriously because I have the space to actually take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that is about having support for self advocacy,
Mm.
right? Self advocacy for your health is one of the most difficult things that people can do, whether it's, self advocacy to your loved ones or your healthcare professional. It can be really uncomfortable and difficult for people to advocate for their health. There are a number of reasons why. Some of them are related to systemic racism, sexism. It's
There's a lot.
multifactorial here, but having the support to do that. I have patients who tell me, they have a very high nutrition IQ, but they are terrified to go to their doctor and get labs done
Mm.
because of, previous experiences with
Yeah.
medical racism, or they have shame or worry or fear about what they will uncover.
Mhm.
And so empowering people to prioritize their health is so important. One of the mindset shifts that we really work with our patients on. We will advocate on their behalf, but truly, there's only so much we can do,
Right.
right? We
Yeah.
empower them to advocate for themselves in these difficult situations by giving them tools, support, perspective.
Yeah. I like that. I think the mindset you mentioned too is a big piece of it because that's the mentality around how I'm going to approach this thing is a big piece. If you go into it thinking, it's not going to work, it's going to be problematic. It just will. Nobody can say anything to you. But then there's also this thought that I like a lot of people. How often do you interact with people that go like, "Oh, it's just another diet thing"? Like I've failed at every single one I've done. Like, do you have people that come in with that don't even have self belief in something, even if they go like, "This could all be great, and then you're the right person for me, and this could looks like a great program, but I can't do this." Like, how do you guys address that for people of like almost giving them confidence they can do it?
Yeah, and I think the best way to do that is people are used to diet culture in which they have, a very specific plan that they have to follow, and that plan is typically extreme and really difficult to execute on a long-term basis, or difficult to execute on a short-term basis. So they start, they get a little momentum going, and then they quit because it's too
Mhm.
hard.
Yeah.
And so the best way to sort of manage that is to build people's confidence by starting with realistic goals that are co-collaborated on. And so instead of me saying, okay, this week let's, cut out this food group and exercise at 5 a.m. for 45 minutes doing HIIT training, right?
Right.
That maybe even is something that one of my patients wants to do. Like, okay, I'm ready to go. I found my person. These are all the things that I want to do. And so
Yeah.
my job is to really work with them in understanding how you can realistically execute something where you can have those wins,
Yeah.
especially early on in the process. So you feel more confident and more empowered, and then it gets easier, right? So
Yes.
that is super important for building confidence, having early wins, setting realistic goals, also managing expectations.
That's
Because
great.
of diet culture,
Yeah.
people really think that, it's going to be easy, but it's not.
Never is. Yeah.
Anthony,
Yeah.
it's
I
not
mean, no,
easy.
yeah. My stuff's all identity. Like the things like I'm listening to this and I hear like there's a lot of identity shifts necessary. So our whole podcast, all shift good, all shift bad, or how successful people make shift happen. And I'm hearing within this how you perceive, how you focus, and like I'm just listening to it. Although I may have to bring it more to the forefront of the conversation, but there's a way that I'm seeing that you think through, almost like how's the word I want, strategically how you approach things.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not that you're like, well, I don't know how we do that. Like you think you've thought through it to solve the problem, which is big. And I think people, when they take that same human trait you have and apply it, it's like, yeah, there's always going to be a solution, but you can't keep making problems for each solution. Like find a solution, try something new and navigate. So I like that. And I do agree. There's part of it. You have to find a way to, find a support system and get the right fit. And it might not be the best fit for everybody, but I like that you talked about it does get easier because the more you do it, the more it becomes something you do and you become the person who does it. And then it just gets done as easy as it is to do something now. Where do you look at the aspect of health and fitness, like fitness part of it? Because I know there's some people that go like, I've actually heard people say you don't have to work out if you eat right. Now I'm not going to say I don't believe that. I've never known someone to clarify it for me perfectly. But where do you
Mm-hmm.
see the dance of like the level of we'll call it exercise someone should give and do in combination with nutrition? Is it all based on the goals? Is there some kind of area where you think like people should have a certain level of exercise fit into it? Is it just nutrition? Like where do you sit in that spectrum?
Yeah, such a great question. So, the health benefits of exercise are well documented. We can definitively say that physical activity is important for
I lean that way.
disease prevention and overall longevity, stress management, a number of different health outcomes. And so, in the work that we do at Culina Health, nutrition is obviously we're registered dietitians. Our
Yeah.
expertise is in nutrition, but we really work with our people on establishing routines around health overall
Mhm.
within our scope of practice. And so we do have some registered dietitians who are also certified fitness instructors. One of
Nice.
our RDs is a yoga instructor, another one is a personal trainer. And so there
Cool.
are some dietitians on our team who do specialize in physical activity, but
Mhm.
with all of the people that we work with, we are encouraging healthy, balanced movement that is sustainable for their lifestyle. And so we're really working with people on not just changing the way that the way that they eat, but also changing the way that they move.
Mhm.
Um, Again, within our scope of practice. And this is important because, as I said, as a clinical practice, we're registered dietitians who work with people on disease prevention, but also disease management.
Mhm.
Physical activity is often an integral part of managing or preventing disease.
I
And so
agree.
it's really important for us to address those factors as well. And then certainly even for people who don't have disease, I have a number of patients who they are doing the wrong types of exercise at the wrong time and fueling those exercises inappropriately. And so we can really work on meal timing, meal composition, for in preparation to optimize physical fitness,
Yeah.
to recover from
Mhm.
physical fitness, to reach any sort of body composition goals. There's a lot that we can do. I think the two are really important, as you know, as an athlete, right? We
Yeah.
we really need to consider nutrition when we are working on any sort of physical activity routine, whether it's the intense level of an athlete or the day-to-day person who really just wants to understand how to move their body and how to fuel appropriately to feel
Yeah.
energized.
I agree. I'm glad you're in that school of thought because the other school of thought, I'm like, I don't get it. I'm not saying it's 100% wrong, but I'm like that. I've never heard it before. I think it's a fad. Someone want to be like, yeah, you don't got to exercise. And it was like a big podcast. I heard that. I'm like, this is craziness. And I also agree. There's also things that there's even great studies. Like there's a book called Sparked by Dr. John Rady that talks about like how you actually release something called brain derived neurotrophic factor. It's this brain protein that levels the brain, helps level out serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, just by movement, right? And it's not crazy. We're
Hmm.
not saying go outside and do CrossFit and puke every workout. I'm not saying that. You know, it might be rolling on a roller or doing like yoga. Like there's certain aspects. And then I think the world we live in, and maybe I'm wrong, but from what I feel is like people are more apt to get the new workout thing than they are to take care of the health. And they'll get the workout thing and completely don't even focus on the nutrition portion and wonder, why am I not
Yeah.
getting it? Well, because now you're burning more calories. And if you don't put something in properly, your body starts to go into starvation mode. So you're not even going to burn the fat you want to burn. You raise your cortisol because of the stress. It all just goes sideways. And so I like you're saying, like, it's got to be in harmony. That's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so for someone looking at this and listening to this, also there's a thought in my head. Where did like these new technology like things, these wearables? I see people like putting like little weird things in their arm and like I can check my glucose level. Do you guys subscribe to that kind of stuff? Do you recommend those things? Where those things fit into the picture?
Yeah, the wearables, I mean, a huge industry
Yeah.
over the last couple of years. Um, there actually is a small body of research that talks about wearables and whether or not they have like meaningful impacts on people's health overall. I think that pedometers can be super helpful from a behavior modification perspective. Some
Yeah.
people really lean into the data and appreciate having benchmarks that are measurable, albeit most of them are not accurate, but at least they convince themselves that they're accurate,
Yeah.
or even
Sounds
just
good.
having,
Yeah.
a benchmark can be motivating from a behavior modification perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think that can be meaningful and useful. As far as the continuous glucose monitoring, most of the research on CGMs shows that actually it's more accurate for people who have diabetes or
Yeah.
insulin resistance,
Interesting.
and can be less accurate for
There
people
we
who are
go.
euglycemic or who have
Yeah.
normal metabolic glucose
Yeah.
control. So, in
Interesting.
terms of accuracy for CGM stuff, um, questionable.
Yeah.
Also, most insurance companies do not cover CGM monitoring for people who don't have a condition in
Mhm.
which they can advocate for, like prediabetes or type 2, but diabetes or type 1 diabetes. And so, again, like we really have to think, okay, these companies are making a lot of money saying that you truly need to have, this wearable that costs a ton of money that your insurance isn't going to cover in order for you to understand the nuances of what is happening with your blood sugar. You could
Right.
also just buy a glucometer at a pharmacy and take fasting and postprandial, which means after eating,
Mhm.
um, glucose, and just get a better sense of what your blood sugar is like in a 3-day time period.
Yeah.
We can also have a good understanding of how you are responding to certain foods, and based on your symptoms. And so it's really easy as healthcare professionals, as dietitians, for me to say, oh, you know what, I think your blood sugar is running a little low because it's been 4 hours with you not having a meal. Your last meal didn't have a lot of protein. You report feeling lightheaded and dizzy
Yeah.
around that time. Like, I know what the signs are of low blood sugar. So
I need to watch.
I don't
You
need a
don't need to
CGM
watch.
to tell me that. Yeah.
If I'm a little drowsy, like, I probably don't need a watch to tell me that I need to eat something. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
and I think it's cool because like I have an Apple Watch, and then I've always debated like, do I want to get this Whoop thing and this Aura ring they got? And they're phenomenal device. I've actually bought them for clients because they wanted them. But I think there is something that you mentioned earlier. That is probably the key thing. It's at least it helps you understand like maybe behavior modification. Maybe it makes you
Hmm.
more cognizant of what you're doing and how you're sleeping. Maybe or how, are you up and moving more often? Like I've had this. I'm at my sit stand desk. And I don't know why, but like last week I was like, I'm not gonna sit down today. And then it turned from Monday to Tuesday. And then I was like, Wednesday, I'm like, let me just make it a week of no sitting. And so I haven't touched my chair in like a week and a half to sit down. And I go, I mean, I just stand like this all day. And it's
Nice.
just nothing more than like I just noticed it and I go, it's probably healthier to stand. I didn't have a
Yeah.
watch to tell me that. I just was like, I need to stand up more. So I like that you say like they're useful in certain aspects. I didn't know that about the glucose monitoring though. I was like, oh, if you put on your arm, people want to be robots nowadays. Maybe they just want to put a bunch of stuff on their body. But I was like, oh, it
Yeah.
works. So I'm glad to hear that. Like when I'm lightheaded, I probably should be like eat some food and I don't need to watch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I literally saw an ad on Instagram and I commented because I was like, this is just ridiculous,
Mm.
of for a CGM monitor. And the person in the ad was like, I found out that I ate an apple and I can't tolerate apples because my blood sugar gets really high and then I crash. And that just pissed me off so much
Mm.
because now we're vilifying apples because of
Apples.
CGM data. Like,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
it's just if you maybe added some protein to that apple, then your blood sugar maybe
Yeah.
might not have spiked so
Peanut
much.
butter.
Or
I do peanut butter apples.
there's yeah, there's so many factors here as to why the apple wasn't well tolerated, and
Yeah.
and so I think we are really doing harm when we are neglecting the context in which we consume food and interpret that data, right?
Yeah.
I have patients with type 2 diabetes, and their blood sugar is really high because they're under a significant amount of stress because a family member was just hospitalized, right? Like, so there's a lot that goes into blood sugar interpretation, and that's why it's so important for you to work with a healthcare professional if
Yeah.
that is something you want to do. If you do want to get a CGM and monitor, unpack that data with an expert so you're not, being overly restrictive or jumping to conclusions. You really have to understand the science and all of the different factors, as you said, the hormones.
Yeah.
There's so many things that influence our blood sugar.
That makes
So,
sense. Sounds like a Culina Health. You guys get the minds for it because there is something to like. I look at the filter of what people because nowadays everyone's on the internet. And I think the problem we have with the vast majority is everyone wants to have a voice, and sometimes they're just saying something to get attention. They don't realize that they actually are saying things that could be detrimental to somebody else, or they're just doing it and not realizing that they're completely wrong, but they read it somewhere else. And so there's something that I like that because every time you've mentioned something, it hasn't been like, well, my opinion is, in my experience, you're like, no, the data shows this, and that's something
yeah.
that I feel comfortable going like, okay, I can listen to you because most people they just throw things out, but I think people they like to also hear that like it's going to be easy. It's going to be like they want to hear it. I think marketing, even the world I live in, of like marketing to people, what's the easiest, fastest way to get someone to do it without if there's no stress for them? And it's like I don't know if that's the way we should do it. Like maybe we should be honest about it. Like a true change is
Yeah.
going to be somewhat difficult, but if you have someone that guides you and shows you that difficult makes you feel proud about yourself, and you get them the outcome, a great body, you're healthier, your life is a little bit better, I believe too.
Yeah, and what's the alternative? What you've been doing is not working. So
Yeah,
you got to try something new, right? Like,
logically, it's
you've
true.
probably tried all of the alternatives and it doesn't work. So that's why
Yeah,
you're here, to try something different.
yeah,
And I'm here to sort of like manage your expectations for that. My co-founder says this all the time: nutrition is not sexy. It is not quick and fast.
yeah.
And it's true. When it comes to changing behaviors and health outcomes, it's not quick and fast and it's not sexy,
Mhm.
but the benefits are quite literally life changing.
Yeah, exponentially life changing. How did you get into all this though? I didn't even ask that question. I realized like what, what did you like as a kid? Was there something like you were like enamored by of like the whole health stuff? What was the trigger that goes, this is a world I want to step into?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually always wanted to be a therapist. I always knew I wanted to help people. I
Yeah.
shifted from mental health to physical health when I had my own personal experience managing a GI condition that
Mm,
really impacted my quality of life. And I did what I just told everybody not to do, which was try to self manage. And I worked with well intentioned physicians who didn't know anything about nutrition, but
mm,
also didn't refer me to a dietitian. And so I ended up in this place where I was just chronically unwell, and while also living a life where I had, intense fears of food. Really, most of my mental energy was really revolved around what am I going to eat? How am I going to eat? Is this going to hurt me when I eat it?
mhm.
Um, and so I got really into nutrition in an effort to heal myself, but ultimately that didn't work. And so when I was able to manage my symptoms in a way that was sustainable, um, it really sparked my interest in being able to help others do the same, on top of the fact that I worked for a nonprofit in Harlem. And I really, at the time, I was trying to pursue a career as a social worker.
Mhm.
And at the time, I won't age myself, but this was almost a decade ago.
Yeah.
Harlem now is very different. There's a Whole Foods in Harlem, but at the time there was not.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so the lack of access for children
Yeah.
from that community to good quality nutrition care, or just food in general, at the time it was a food desert, was alarming. And so my passion for helping others, the very clear health disparities that I saw, it was clear the children that I was working with were malnourished, and that impacted their cognitive function, their ability to perform in school, so many their mood, so many factors. And so I really saw like the clear connection, how important nutrition was to mental and physical health, and the clear disconnect with access to food, nutritious food, and education and care.
That makes sense. So that's what my wife gets all whenever she's hasn't eaten, she's crazy. She gets all hangry.
Hangry?
I'm
Yeah,
joking.
it's very real. It's very real.
Well, it is. I've noticed with her. I'm usually pretty good. I think I have a thing that triggered me when I'm in a bad mood. I try to be nicer to people because the worst thing could be somebody being mad at me after I'm not mad anymore because I was mad at them. Weird brain thought. But actually noticed I went to the Philippines. I was 2015. I went and taught like some kids football out there. And I remember like there's kids that I'm like, oh, how old are you? Like 7 or 8? And they're like 15, 16. I'm like, man, like they don't go to school, like they don't communicate very well. They're very malnourished and small. And like it's crazy how like you don't see that typically where I'm at. Where I'm in California, where you don't notice that, but the rest of the world, it's a lot going on that people aren't privy to informationally and even seeing. That nutrition plays such a huge role in people's entire like lifestyle and how they're experiencing life and how their bodies even reaching full capacity or size because they don't have the food.
Yeah, I mean, even domestically here in California, in Florida, right? We have food deserts. There isn't access to good quality food. I'm sure we're all very aware of how expensive food is right now.
Yeah.
Eggs are costing
Hmm.
$8. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot in the United States that prevents people from eating well. And
Yeah.
then add on top of that, relationship with food, emotional connection with food. So we have lack of access, we have lack of education, we have lack of mental health support, right? And sort of leaning on food as comfort. There's a lot involved here, and that's really the work that we love to do at Culina is, unpack that. How can we be more neutral about food? How can we you know, deal with the lowest hanging fruit? Like foundationally, how can we meet your needs, whether you are, coming from a food desert
Mhm.
or you are a marathon trainer, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone has a unique experience with food. And we're really here to kind of honor that experience while
Yeah.
also nudging you towards the direction of your goals.
I like that. I like it a lot. You're very thorough. I like the angles of everything. Like if I was to extract all the best parts of my thoughts of this, like you hit them all like in the right way. And I'm nowhere near as educated as you. Just like we'll call it the common sense to it. The common sense to it's all there. It's like, hey, you're coming from different places. Your lifestyle's going to be different. You are different, and so the cookie cutter thing of like, don't just eat fish oils and put lemon juice and cayenne pepper in a cup, and you're going to lose 15 pounds. Like we're not talking about that. It's like you're going to eat food for the rest of your life. So if you eat the right food for the rest of your life, the rest of your life could be longer. If you incorporate some
That's
kind of
right.
nutrition to that, it helps you in all aspects, right? If you do it properly. So I like this. I honestly, just so you guys know, like I just this I'm saying the people listening and yourself, like I just hop on podcasts. No, my team doesn't always tell me who I'm interviewing. I get like a little bit of a rundown. And I purposely like that. I like to get to know you in real time, if that makes sense. And so I've enjoyed getting to know you. What's the future
Likewise.
for Culina? Where do you guys see this thing going? Because then you got it's kind of budding and it's building. Like, what's the bigger vision for it? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, such a great question. So we are right now we have a team of 40 registered dietitians in different states throughout the country. We want to continue to provide more access by growing our clinical team and reaching more patients. We are a virtual company, and we are building our own technology to support that growth
Hmm.
and access. And ultimately, our vision is to make clinical nutrition care accessible to everyone. And so, we want to reach more people, but we also want to create a new category of nutrition in which that is science based, that is accessible,
Yeah.
um, where people have access to to professionals they can trust
Hmm.
about nutrition. So they're not, hanging out on TikTok trying to figure out what to eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
They can,
Yeah.
go to Culina and get trustworthy support, education, resources. And I think it's not just about science; it's also about nutrition care that is culturally competent and personalized. And so
Yeah.
that's what's next for us. That's what we're trying to do. We're really
Like,
lucky to have support from um, our community to be able to do that. And our foundation is here. We just want to make it bigger.
yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, it's a good mission. It's a phenomenal mission. I think the world needs it nowadays as more information comes out about the things we're putting in our bodies and what it's doing. I heard this recently that when people like, I don't go to the morgue often, but for some reason I met a guy who happened to work at the morgue. It's weird, like a situation, but he goes, nowadays we're noticing is people's bodies when they've passed away and they're there, they, stay longer because of the preservatives in their body from the food that they eat.
Ooh,
Right?
ooh.
Oh, it's crazy.
Oh, I haven't not heard that one. That is a takeaway.
Isn't it? Oh, I was like, that
Ooh.
is so I try to be as healthy. I want to live. I want to live for a long time, man. I want to be around my kids. Who knows? Maybe like when the AI hits and it becomes Terminator days, like they're gonna make new kidneys and bodies and I can just live forever. No, I'm joking. But no, I love this conversation. I thank you so very much for hanging out with us. Two questions. First question is, where can I send people to get more information about Culina Health, you, all the good stuff?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Anthony. This has been super fun. I love the organic conversation. There's so much to talk about here. You can find us at culinahealth.com. You can also find us on Instagram and most major social media. We just started a TikTok account, so
Nice.
spare us. We're old. We're trying to figure it out.
Content goes there. I have no idea what happens over. I don't even log into that place. I see things like,
I've never done it before, but the time has come where I need to
yeah,
be a late adapter.
mhm. Awesome.
But our handle is at Culina Health. You can find me also on Instagram at tamarsamuels.rd.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Second question is final question, and you can answer however you want to. But what promise did God or the Creator make to the world when they created you?
Anthony, this is a big question.
That is a good question. I'll leave it to you.
This is very existential. I have a special gift of getting people. I think I have a warmth and empathy that I haven't really met yet.
Mhm.
Um, and beyond that, just being able to sort of synthesize like what's going on with someone is my strength. And so, I'm good at understanding people, and I think that helps me to be more empathetic and to use that power for good.
I like it. The world needs that a lot. It needs a lot of that because most people are weirdly selfish nowadays to a extent that it becomes difficult for me to even like manage with some humans. So I appreciate someone coming forth and actually having an empathy and a care for people and showing up and doing it. You're literally doing it. You're juggling a life that's, I'm sure, is not easy, but it's time consuming building something, but you're doing it for people because of the impact it can make. So thank you for doing that. That's it. Thank you so much for hanging
Thank
out with
you.
us. And everybody listening, thank you guys for hanging out with us too. If something in this episode resonated with you, go apply it. Definitely go and check them out. It's going to be something where if this sounds like the right thing, it's probably the right thing, right? Go take the leap, go take a look, go down the rabbit hole of finding out maybe you could eat rabbit food or not eat rabbit food.
You
Right?
won't be eting rabbit food.
You won't
Also,
be
guys,
able.
we do free discovery calls. So
Oh,
you
do
can talk
you?
to us. Yeah, yeah, you can talk to us for free
You go.
by signing up on our website. You can hop on with one of our patient support team members and learn more about Culina. If you want to talk through your specific goals, any medical conditions you have, we can match you with the best dietitian.
Mm,
And we do free verifications for your insurance. So
boom.
book a discovery call with us. We'll check your insurance for you and match you with the best RD, all at no cost.
Beautiful. I love it. It literally have nothing to lose, everything to gain. So go do that.
Nothing.
It's perfect. I like it. I like it. That's it. Thank you guys for hanging out. And also, if somebody else that you know could like benefit from this conversation, maybe you've been trying to say something to them and they don't want to listen to you, maybe they will listen to Tamar. So put this in front of them. Just share the episode and see what it can do to their life. Outside of that, as always, make the most of your off shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Tamar Samuels signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning into the Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.